what do you think was your impact on from being in that type of environment growing up, where you had, the poetry and the love and the connection with your dad and also with your mom, but also witness and this like go between in conflict?
Number one, just like basically
Feel for you.
getting used to being a mediator, getting used to like trying to listen very carefully to what was happening to someone and like de-escalate by reflecting them and by being with them. So I think that was really powerful for me. Um, Getting to see how destructive it could be not to talk about the dynamics that were happening.
Because they never talked about any of it.
Definitely not with us, and I don't think they had much ability to see outside of it. I think they probably tried to.
You weren't scared when they would
Oh yeah,
argue?
I was.
You felt fear.
Yeah. I didn't feel fear that like there was going to be physical abuse, but I felt very frozen and scared, and especially like when my dad would blow up at us as well.
Would he
Um,
like throw things? Was it outward expression, like bang on walls, or
he
what did
only
it look
threw
like?
something once. He would storm around. He would yell.
Yell, cuss.
Uh, Occasionally cuss. Yeah. Um, Project, I'm sure, use universalizing language, like just yeah, he would kind of go from 0 to 60 very quickly. And
Quickly on a dime.
you kind of never knew what was going to set him off. It's funny, like I don't think I've ever been asked this question about how he related or asked much about that dynamic. So it's actually really, really interesting to think about, and I appreciate the questions. Yeah. And my mom probably overshared to me, especially. Like I was very much her confidant, which I think gave me a sense of kind of emotional responsibility at quite a young age. And I didn't have like a ton of responsibility outside of that. Like I was quite sheltered as a kid. I was like, we were upper middle class, like um, definitely a little bit isolated, but given all the things for a good childhood, except for social interaction, really. But that wasn't necessarily their fault. They just didn't really know how to model it because they both had very demanding careers.
And perhaps not the tools to figure out how to prioritize
Not at all. There
or
was no.
to, I don't know.
It's really interesting discovering things in authentic relating, like going meta, talking about a dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my God, how much would have changed in my childhood if I'd known that existed? And also, how did my dad, as a trained psychiatrist who was in therapy with years and years of experience, like not know these incredibly basic tools? Like Freudian psychoanalysis, I'm sorry to say, is bullshit. You can't fix what is right now by looking at your childhood. Like you actually have to change your behavior. You have to understand how you are. You have to understand how your parts interact with each other, or like how your somatics are, something other than just understanding your past. So I also developed like quite a dislike of psychotherapy until recently when some of these new methodologies have become more
Well,
popular.
Carl Rogers,
Yeah. Carl Rogers, yeah, I mean, that's
the
much more
human-centered approach.
like what we do, but also the rise of somatic psychology
Yeah.
and
Yep.
internal family systems and some
Yep.
of these um,
They all go
much,
really well together. I
even
love,
Gestalt. Yeah.
yeah, Fritz Perl.
Hmm.
You got this kind of like triangle of what I think is, Basil van der Kolk and what Peter, anyway, the somatic stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of those folks, which is like, yeah, what's going on in your body? What are emotions like? How are you responding to them? And what this whole thing. And then you have mindfulness,
Hmm.
like awareness. Like
Yeah.
that's it all starts to have that awareness of what's going on in my present moment experience, which encompasses the somatic experience. And I think the third part of that triangle is that nonviolent communication, or you could bring in Gestalt or Fritz Perl or that human-centered approach of like,
Hmm.
how am I expressing outwardly and internally
Yeah.
as a
Like the
result?
CBT style of
Yeah,
thing as well. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think all of those are more powerful tools than the ones that they used to use back then in like, at least in his world in like the 90s. So, yeah.
So there was these kind of arguments, and there's this kind of emotional bringing you into responsibility or giving you way more than you probably should have been exposed to at a young age,
Probably emotionally
supporting your
speaking.
mom,
Hmm.
which that that might have felt good, like I'm being let in, but at the same time not realizing.
Yeah. It was something I could do, was trying to, like, be the mediator and go back and forth, kinda like a shuttle mediator, basically,
Mhm.
because most of the time they weren't talking to each other after they'd had a fight. Um, but in retrospect, it led me to overtake responsibility and to start believing that feeling someone else's emotions and taking on their pain was a form of solving the problem. So that's
Yeah.
been a really hard thing to detach from in my life.